Okay, when Doris and I started the Anatomy 100, it was in January, about a year and a half ago. What we wanted to do is we wanted to film animals that were shot, so then we could document what organs were hit and all the details that we deal with the Anatomy 100. There's no place to do that in Wisconsin when there's 2 feet of snow on the ground. So we went to Texas. We spent 5 weeks in Texas, and we did that there, trying to go from ranch to ranch to get permission for us to film hunters shooting these animals. Well, there wasn't that many hunters shooting them in January. I was very much surprised. Hardly any place let us in, so our results were really poor. But we had one ranch that opened us up, or opened up to us to allow us to hunt. We went down there to film other people. Fortunately, I brought my bow with me, and I got to hunt in this ranch that had an excess of Aoudads. Actually, they had too many of them, and they said they would allow me to be able to shoot a female. So what you're gonna get to see in this hunt is you're gonna get to see me harvest this animal on film. Now, the hunt itself was not that exciting, but it was a lot of fun actually for us being in the blind and seeing all the different animals there. And then what you're gonna see in this film is when we were there for hours sitting in a blind, nothing happening, we're seeing other animals that were in this enclosure, because it was high fence. This is a can hunt. And all of a sudden we were invaded. When these Aoudad came, it wasn't there's one here, one there. Woof, it's like an army came in and like attacked us. They were all around us. And that was an experience in itself for us that was exciting. So hopefully you'll enjoy this hunt. We've got some other questions, some other points to make as we go along, that when we're done with this, hopefully this is gonna help make you a better hunter.
It's got its head down right there.
I'm gonna wait the one behind it there. The arrow's gonna go through it.
She just scraped the ground,
Yeah,
right?
that's the one I want, but let's focus on that one if we can. It's gonna get separated. Okay. Okay. It's gonna go. Okay, there we go. You ready?
Yeah.
There we go.
See, where did it go?
I don't know.
I think it went to the right and then it went to the left.
I got it perfect.
Okay, good. Okay,
I shot quick like I always do.
Yeah.
I got it perfect.
okay.
The arrow's laying over there on the ground.
Okay.
I shot quicker than I wanted to, which I
I think it
always
was
do.
really good though.
Yeah, I know. I hit right by the elbow. The arrow's laying there. It zipped all the way through it. So I don't know where their heart, their lungs, and everything is. But the bottom line is it's low. So the hard part is I know one's gonna come there. So then I put it on there. I shot. I mean, it's a piece of cake. Easiest shot of my life, but they're zipping, and this is the one that we wanted.
Yeah.
So this is
All right.
what we wanted. So.
All right.
Okay, we're not supposed to go out right away, but
How many yards was it, you think?
well, let me take the range finder and find out. Okay. Yards.
Okay.
Look at this. This shows you the width of it right there. See that?
Here, wait, hold up. Do that again.
The width of my bow.
Yeah.
Wider the blood there.
Yeah.
See it there to there.
Yeah.
So we can measure that there to there. And even farther. See the band in the sand. It just spraying. Can't be far. See the blood there to the left?
Yeah.
You follow with the camera.
There's a bunch of blood at this connector.
See it there and there. See it?
Oh, yeah, it did go over here. Okay.
Dorsey. Right there.
Oh, there it is. There it is. Oh, yeah, point to it, Brian. Point to it again.
You can talk now. Well, you can see the blood about the width
You want to point to where it is?
It's all over.
No, I mean,
Point to the animal? Oh, you can see it over there in the bushes. Can you see it?
yeah. Wow.
Follow the trail there. take my rangefinder, put it on about 50 yards. 50 yards. Blood the whole way. There's the scar on its side that we were looking at, Doris. See that?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Okay. Let's pull it out. Oh, look at that blood there. Look at that blood there.
Yeah.
Look at the size of that hole.
All right, now it's your turn. I want to ask you some questions about what you saw, okay? Now the first question has 3 answers. And the question is, did this broadhead hit A, the heart, B, the lungs, or C, the liver? Okay? Now, for each correct answer, if there is more than one, you get 20 points. For each incorrect answer, you get a minus 20 points. So think this through very closely before you do it. Now, when you're done with that question, I have 3 other questions that you don't get any points for, but they're questions to make you think, to make you pause, to make you look at things. The way that when I look at an animal when they're being shot, and as a sculptor, I look at things completely different than other people do, very specifically. So here's 3 of the questions I have for you. Number 1, where would the elbow of the Aoudad be? The elbow, we call it the elbow, it's olecranon, it's technically what it's called. Where would that have been if the animal's head was up and the leg was down? Probably you didn't pay any attention to be able to know where its head was, where the elbow was. But when I shot it, its head was down feeding, and then the distance gets closer for the animal, so its back comes down. The legs can't allow it to go down, so the legs pivot and they come up higher in the body and they go back farther. So in other words, when I shot him, on his elbow, his olecranon, it was back and higher than it would have been if it was down. The question is, how much? Because that determines the judgment of what organs were hit. Okay? Question number 2. What horizontal angle was the Aoudad when I shot at it? Now, what do I mean by that, horizontal angle? We have what's called broadside, right? We all know that. But then when it's quartering towards or quartering away, we don't have a definition of that. If you watch my other videos, I do have a definition. So the animal, if it was angled away, was it angled away at, if this is 90, this would be 80, 70, 60, 50, or was it quartering towards? We start out at 90, 80, 70, 60, like that. So that's a question for you. Now the animal's there for you to take a look at in the photo, so think very closely. Number 4, would have it been possible for me to shoot that Aoudad in the center of the heart without hitting the humerus bone or any of the other leg bones, the radius and the ulna, let alone the olecranon? Or would have I had to hit the heart, would have I had to go through and center punch those bones? Okay? Those are questions for you to think of and for you to come to try to find out the answer. And if you do this, it's going to make you start looking at animals and you're going to start examining them in specific detail, specific questions, looking at them horizontally, looking at them vertically, looking at the angles that they're at, looking at trajectory downward angles. And that's the criticism that you need to have, not criticism, the critical nature you need to have to be able to see specifically what it takes to make an absolutely perfect kill shot. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully these questions are going to inspire you to make you a better hunter. Now we're coming to the good part. What is the purpose of all this learning? The purpose is for us to learn what the perfect kill shot would be on an Aoudad. So how do we do this? We take the research that we've got here and we add up the heart, lungs, and liver. We then subtract the skeletal structure, which would be the backbone, the sternum, the humerus, and the shoulder blade. We then take that square surface area there, that shape, and we literally take a pie plate, a circle. We make it as big as we possibly can to fit it within that given space that we've just created. And we go where the exact middle of that paper plate is, and voila. That is the exact perfect kill shot placement to give you the greatest degree of air where you could shoot high, low, right, or left and still kill the animal. Photo number 1 clearly shows the entrance hole on the unskinned animal. This is your chance for you to change your answer of whether or not you think I shot him in the heart or the lungs. But just remember, if you change your answer, you only get half the amount of points. Photo number 2 shows the exit hole. If you look closely, or even if you don't look closely, you can see the exit hole is much smaller than the entrance hole. The question is why? I'm going to give you my hypothesis, and I believe it is this. Number 1, the animal was shot at an angle, and when you shoot an animal at an angle, you're going to cut from the side and you make a bigger hole. Number 2, if you go back and look at the live video, I hit in what would be called the crease, or the muscle that causes the crease is the tricep. So there's a fold of skin there that when I cut through all of that, when you flatten that skin out, all of a sudden it becomes much larger. So these are all interesting things to note, that as a hunter, when you see things that do not make sense, you ask the question why, and it's our job to try to figure it out. Notice on the skinned animal that the entrance hole is not near as large as it was on the unskinned animal. And that's because it's not tearing through skin that's folded, it's hitting the carcass more square. Photo number 4 shows the leg being pulled straight down. If you notice when I shot at that elbow, the olecranon was up much closer where that hole was. If you take a look at the distance from the hole where the arrow went in to where the scapula is, to where the humerus is, to the glenohumeral joint, you'll see there's not very much room for error if I shot forward from that spot. A few observations about photo number 5. Number 1, the broadhead went through between ribs number 6 and 7, and you'll see that we cut some 3 ribs out so we could expose the heart so we can see exactly where the broadhead went through. Another thing I want you to take a look at is you'll see there's 2 screws in the ribs. What in the world would I be putting screws in the ribs for? Well, I could bore you with how I came about it, but if you take a look at the top screw, that is exactly the dead middle height-wise from the top of its shoulder to the bottom of its brisket. If you take the look at the screw below it, that is the exact dead middle of the thorax cavity height-wise from the bottom of the vertebrae on the inside of the rib cage to the top of the sternum at the bottom of the deer down where the heart lies. Okay, and that's very important for me as we're going through teaching exactly where you should shoot. One of the references, where do you shoot from the middle of the deer? Do you shoot higher or do you shoot lower? Well, you have to know, how do you know where the middle of the deer is? One way I do by taking my measurements is I end up putting screws in the ribs, so as I skin the animal and I work on it, those screws aren't going anywhere. I can always see where the middle of the thorax cavity is and where the middle of the height of the entire animal is. Well, the answer of whether or not I shot the Aoudad in the heart or I shot him in the lungs above the heart is answered in photo number 6. And as you can plainly see, you can see the broadhead went through the rear, back, top of the heart. I just want to make a comment on the position of the heart in photo number 6. You'll see many anatomical drawings where the heart is laid flat horizontally along the bottom of the inside of the sternum. You will see here in this situation, if that heart was like that, laid down at that angle, there's no way that I would have been able to hit him in the heart like that. So that's just a little bit more evidence to be able to try to show the angle and the position of the heart when it was alive when my arrow went through them. Photo number 7, when we're dealing with inflating the lungs, gets us into a big deal that gets complicated. So I'm going to try to make this as short and as simple as I can. Number 1, I want you to see that those lungs there are fully inflated. And I want you to think if you go for a run and you're out of breath and you're breathing real heavy, your lungs can only inflate so much. They can only go back to the rear of the diaphragm, where the diaphragm attaches to the ribs. Now, if you take a look at the lungs here, when we inflated them to the max that we could go, they do not line up with the diaphragm in the bottom of the ribs. You'll see that gap from the bottom there. The reason is the ribs here are laying flat on their side, so that tends to have them lay flatter and go rearward. When the animal is alive, the muscles that are in between the ribs, the meat that we eat when we have ribs on the grill, they're called the intercostal muscles, those actually pull the ribs out and forward. So if you can imagine when that animal is alive, those ribs would line up absolutely perfect. It's called the false ribs and the true ribs, where they meet, and they meet with the lung and the diaphragm all at the same point. The other thing that we're going to see is we're going to find out that the hole in the lungs do not line up with the hole that I shot through the ribs. And again, the answer is very simple. The lungs expand greatly when they're fully inflated, when you're breathing in, and they go down quite a bit as I don't like to use the word deflate, but when they go through the exhalation process, the lungs, they lose their size as they go down. So when you shoot them, where are the lungs at that particular time? And they vary depending on the breathing process, just like it does with us. If you look closely at photo number 8, you will see my finger protruding through the lung behind the entrance hole of the meat that goes through the ribs by about, I didn't measure it, it's about 1.5 inches, I would guess that is. And that will show you and prove where the lungs are at, where they're inflated at the time when you shoot them, how much that it varies, because we need to line all the holes up to make everything absolutely perfect. Photo number 9 shows the size of the lungs when they're inflated to the exact spot where they line up with the entrance hole of the broadhead. Okay, photo number 10 is actually a deceiving photo. I don't even like to show it because it makes it look like, wow, look at the lungs. Those are perfect. They're being inflated. That's just the way they are. They're not. Go do a little bit of anatomy here. Between the lungs is a membrane called the mediastinum. That membrane is attached to the backbone up on top and to the sternum down below. That pulls the lungs back, up, and down, and it spaces it correctly. When they're taken out of the carcass, and that's no longer attached to the backbone and the sternum, the lungs tend to get shorter in length and wider in height, and they tend to have more of a round appearance. So that's why it's good for me to show you this, but you need to understand the research I do is based upon studying death and not life. And I have to be very, very careful, and we all have to be careful of studying a dead animal because that's not the way they are when they're alive. Also, again, take a note at where my hole actually is in the lung. You go back and we take a look at where that is on the actual live animal. That will show you how far forward the lungs coming that low on the Aoudad actually are. I did not have much farther that I could go back and I would have missed the lungs. If I went forward very much, you'd see that I'd end up hitting the bones. So now we're going to take a look at what is the perfect shot and where should have that shot been. Photo number 11 shows the lungs in a 3-way split screen, being both totally inflated, partially inflated, and then totally deflated. So let's sum it up. On an Aoudad, when the lungs are fully inflated, you have a much larger kill zone, lungs, on an Aoudad than you do on a white-tailed deer. On the other hand, the lungs on the Aoudad, when they're not fully inflated, when they're at rest at the place where they were at when I shot it, you actually have, for the size of the animal, as deceiving as it is, you actually can have a smaller kill zone because the leg bones sit up higher on the animal, so that forces you to shoot up higher. And you can't go forward that much because of how the shoulder blades, the length of the humerus is not as long going forward, so that brings the humerus back farther than it would on a white-tailed deer. So to sum it up, if you take a look at how Gavin did the overlay graphics, you'll literally be able to see that it's only about 1 inch to 1.5 inches above my entrance hole gives you the largest kill animal guaranteed on an Aoudad. And it amazes me when I look at how small that circle is, yet when I compare it to how large the lungs can be on an animal that has such a deep, broad chest. But that is, my friends, what the perfect kill shot documentation project is all about. Not giving you my opinion, not giving you what I think, but by documenting what the facts are. And there you get to see them with your own eyes.
I smoke.